My wife stole our daughter's college money to fund her shopping addiction and wants me to take the blame. Plus updates. Original post. I'm stuck in between a rock and a hard place, and I don't know what to do. And the problem is, I can't discuss it with anyone I'm close with for privacy reasons. I've been with my wife, Andrea, 48 female, and my stepdaughter, Cassie, 17 female for 8 years now. I love them both to death, and Cassie is a very brilliant young woman. Recognizing her potential, me and Andrea decided to put together a college fund for Cassie so she wouldn't be crushed by debt. Over the years, it has amounted to over $200,000. Cassie is aware of this and is banking on it since she's trying to get into an Ivy League. To make a long story short, last week, I found out that almost $170,000 of the money was missing from the account. I freaked out and asked Andrea if she knew anything about it. She teared up and said that she had been spending the money over the years to fund her spending habit. I was furious, but I had a moment of clarity. I've browsed these subs enough to know that an affair was possible, so I asked her if she was having one. She adamantly denied it and offered any proof I needed. Social media accounts, emails, her work phone, everything. She offered to show me the receipts as well. There was nothing that popped out as suspicious, and the math from the receipts added up as well, so I let it go. But we still had the major problem of the money being gone. She described herself as a shopping addict, and the money from Cassie's account was just too tempting not to use. She didn't make excuses, but offered no solutions either. As stated before, I was beyond furious. She ruined Cassie's chances at going to college debt-free and has changed the trajectory of her whole life. I'd asked her to stay with her sister while I tried to figure this out. Cassie was concerned about why she was leaving, but we just said we needed a little bit of space. I asked Andrea to come back home yesterday, and we had an extremely long discussion about how to handle this. She stopped me from talking and asked a favor of me. She asked if I could take the fall for her. For context, her and Cassie don't get along for a variety of reasons, and knowing how independent Cassie is, she will probably leave right after college if not during. In fact, me and Cassie get along very well, and she comes to me for a lot of her issues. Andrea fears this will permanently drive Cassie away, and she doesn't want to lose her. I told her that before we even talk about that, she needed to acknowledge her mistake and own it. She needed to go to individual therapy. We needed couples counseling. She needed to find a shopaholic support group, and that I would be controlling the finances from now on. She said those terms were steep but fair. I said she needed to tell Cassie what she did, apologize, and hope for the best. She refused and said she could never lose Cassie. She said I could survive the mistake, but she couldn't. I told her that in order to even consider me taking the fall, she needs to agree to my terms. I don't know what the hell to do. The last thing I want to do is lie to Cassie, but I don't want Andrea and Cassie to split up forever. And the worst part about this whole thing is that Cassie's life is ruined either way, and I don't know how to replenish the money other than maybe borrowing from my 401k. Do you guys have any suggestions? Divorce is always an option, but I love Andrea despite her mistakes, and me dating at age 52 is next to impossible. Now for the top advice before reading the updates. Perhaps the reason they don't get along is because Cassie recognizes that Andrea is the type to do these kinds of things and guilt-trip others to take the blame, instead of accepting what she has done and how it has impacted her family. Although it may be a tough conversation for Andrea to have now, it might show Cassie that her mom is capable of admitting mistakes and growing. Taking the blame for it and finding out later, in my opinion, might make things worse. Andrea is a widow, and Cassie took the death of her father very hard since she was so young. According to Andrea, a lot of their problems started there out of grief and anger. Then Cassie grew up and she's developed into a bit of tomboy. Andrea is a kind of a girly girl and doesn't relate to Cassie dressing up tomboyish. They don't agree on much. Cassie wants to be a physicist. Andrea wants her to do something that has more money-making potential. Plus, there's usual teenage daughter and mother strife. They have screaming matches that I have to intervene in. Dude, how did you not see that all the money was gone or that your wife was buying all this stuff? To answer your question, I had really nothing to do with the account other than contributing money. I just took her word for it. She showed me statements from time to time, so I had no reason to suspect anything. Plus, we have separate finances, except for a joint account for household expenditures and bills. Although Cassie's my daughter, Officially, I'm only stepdad, so Andrea handles all matters related to her finances unless Cassie asks me for something directly. Also, I wasn't a lone contributor. Her grandparents on both sides contributed as well as my own parents. I only discovered what was going on when my wife left a statement out in the open. I'm now believing she simply pocketed whatever money she got and doctored the statements. I knew the amount that was supposed to be there because a lot of the money came in the beginning. Her grandparents initially contributed $75,000. Mine contributed another $30,000, plus the amount that I added over the years. Don't take from your savings but hers. Make her sell all her belongings. I asked her to take money from her account to pay her back, but she said protecting her retirement is important to her and that she could take out a loan since her credit is excellent. Surprisingly enough, she doesn't run up her credit cards. Now I know how. Also, I'm hesitant to do this. I understand everyone wants her to fight for this, and I do too. However, if I'm to stay with Andrea, I don't want her to have to continue working until she's dead. I would like to enjoy our retirement together. My retirement is very healthy, plus I have a few investments and an inheritance. I could survive the hit. The most important thing is Cassie gets to go to whatever school it is she wants, and don't have to worry about it. But the comments are right. I'm not letting Andrea off the hook. She's going to pay for this, and she will be telling Cassie. Do not take the blame. Your wife admitting her mistake to her daughter is the only way your wife's addiction is going to stop. If she can't admit her wrongdoings to the person it hurts the most, she can't move on from her addiction. To add to that, taking the blame isn't going to improve your daughter's relationship with her mom. It's only going to create a situation where she feels that she has two parents that she can't trust or rely on. Don't take that away from her by turning yourself into another unreliable adult in her eyes. You're looking out for her best interest always, and she should know that. 100% this. Do not take the blame. Your wife made her bed. Make her lie in it. She did this to her own flesh and blood. Don't be your scapegoat. You love Cassie and don't deserve the fallout that will occur. Now for the updates. After everyone in here knocked some sense into me, I realized I can't lie to Cassie. I love her too much, and she deserves the absolute truth, no matter how ugly and hard it is. I will be talking to Andrea and telling her that we need to tell her the truth together as a condition of us staying together, or else I will initiate divorce proceedings and tell Cassie anyway. Also, as someone suggested, I don't need her trying to flip the script on me, so I'll record our interactions going forward. Thanks. Update 2. I want to thank everyone here for really opening my eyes yesterday. You all are right. I need to put Cassie first. And like I said, I'll be telling the absolute truth. Even if she gets mad at me and disowns me, at least I'll know I did the right thing. In addition, I'm going to pay for college myself. I can pull money from a couple of places, such as my retirement and inheritance, so it'll be okay. If I have to live a little frugally during retirement and work a few extra years, then so be it. Cassie's worth it. I honestly doubt her mother is going to sell her stuff, so that's why I'm taking this route. As for Andrea, I've been criticized for wanting to let Andrea off the hook, so to speak, but it's easy to say when really deep feelings aren't involved. That being said, I don't think I can stay with her. What she did is horrendous, and she ruined our daughter's future for addiction. We had a long discussion late last night, and I threatened divorce unless she told Cassie the truth. She begged me not to do this, but I put my foot down, and eventually she agreed, but only if I agreed not to divorce her, and I helped to repair their relationship. I likely won't be doing either. She made her bed, so she can sleep in it. Now for the second story. I killed my dad and I don't regret it. Plus update. I, 27 female, never really had a great relationship with my dad, 55 male. When I was 6 years old, him and my mom went through a nasty divorce. It was so bad my mom had resorted to substances to help cope. It got so bad that she overdosed and had to go to rehab, and I was forced to live with my dad. For the first couple of years, it was great. I was his only child, so I was really spoiled. And it was like that until I turned 9 years old and my dad met his now wife we're gonna call Sherry. I never liked Sherry because I felt like she was trying to steal my dad away from me. Whenever I had a school function, I wanted my dad to come. Sherry always kept him from coming. I ran track and played soccer, and my dad used to always come to my little peewee games, but when Sherry came, it was he had something better to do. Sherry also has kids herself. She has 2 sons and a daughter. I kind of enjoyed having other kids in the house, because being an only child did get boring. I got along great with her kids. Me and her daughter was the same age, and her sons were 2 years older than us, twins. As I grew up, my dad started to grow further apart from me and got closer to Sherry's kids. He would go to school functions, games, recitals, parent-teacher conferences, anything that included parents. He would always show up for Sherry's kids and nothing for me. It gotten so bad that we had to have a meeting with my dad and a guidance counselor because she noticed how my grades would start to slip and how I never participated in anything anymore. And wouldn't you guess it, my dad didn't even show up to the meeting. I started to slowly hate my dad after that and wouldn't even try talking to him anymore. The breaking point for me was my 15th birthday. I'm Colombian, and everyone knows that in the Latin community, the 15th birthday is the most important day for a little girl. During my birthday month, my dad actually started to acknowledge me and we started to plan my quins. And I was the happiest I've been in years. We picked out the venue, my dress, the song me and dad were gonna dance to. We sent out invites, picked out decorations. Everything was going great until a week before the party. Everything was paid for. People already RSVP'd and everything was set in stone. Until my dad announced that we were going on a vacation the day of my quins. I asked him about my party, and he said he canceled it and wanted to go on vacation instead. I pretended to be okay with it and said okay and asked where we were going. Then Sherry laughed and said that I wasn't going with them and that I was going to stay with my grandma instead. After that day, I just decided to give up on any kind of relationship me and my dad could possibly have. I had no more birthdays, no Christmas gifts, and basically had to fend for myself. Which was crazy because my family was rich and was really well off. I had to get a job in order to get new clothes and shoes, hygiene stuff, hair care products, etc. When I turned 18, I moved out and went to live with my grandma and cut off all communication with my dad and his family. I graduated high school and went to college for orthodontics. Years went by and I never spoke to my dad or heard any news about him or his family until I got a call from a hospital. It was about how my dad got into a bad car wreck and he was basically dead and was on life support, and how I was the last person on his emergency call list and that no one else answered. I went to the hospital and they told me the same thing they said over the phone and asked me if I wanted to keep the life support. And without thinking, I said no and said to take him off of it. He killed my spirit and so I pulled the plug on him, and I didn't feel bad at all. It's been years since that day, and I now have a husband with 3 kids that I love to death, and I still don't feel bad about what I did. Now for the top comments. I'm surprised you were even on the list, to be honest. Did he just forget to remove you? Also curious as to how or why no one else answered, as it sounds like the only person he neglected was you. Also, what was the fallout? The rest of his family had to find out at some point that you elected to remove the life support. Not going to lie, this is fairly dark. If he had a DNR, or the doctor said he had no hope, / was going to be a vegetable, then by all means cut it off and walk away. But was that even the case? It sounds like you still have some demons inside you that needs exorcising. You may want to talk to someone about that. To answer your question, to my knowledge, my dad had only 2 people on as emergency contact list, his mom and aunt. My grandmother died a few months before his car wreck, and my aunt was on vacation around that time. I was kind of surprised myself to find out that I was also on the list. Also, he was basically left brain dead after the car wreck, and there was really nothing they could have done. That makes more sense then. Also, he clearly never bothered to update that list, as not even his wife was on it, assuming they were even still together or not in the same car. The worst you did was to deny anyone who did care about him the chance to say goodbye, which if the way he treated you was any indication, it probably wasn't many. Keep trying to live your best. You may also want to edit in that point so people don't think you're some kind of sociopath. So what had happened to Sherry and her kids? Why weren't they on the list? What was their response to the decision? My dad had a will and got Sherry's kids' trust funds, and left some money for Sherry in the house, and split up everything else among some family members. I honestly don't know why they weren't on the list. It was kind of a surprise that I was even on there, and they were upset that I pulled the plug. If he was brain dead, you didn't kill him. In my opinion, that is the kindest thing you can do for them. I thought this was going in a different direction. What happened to Sherry and the other kids? Well, last I heard, Sherry got remarried. Her two older sons are also married and have families of their own, and her daughter is a single mom. I mean, where were Sherry and their kids when Dad was in the hospital? No one else answered. Did they explain? Did they care you made a final decision? They weren't on the emergency call list, so they didn't know. Now for the update. So a lot of people was wondering why I was the one that got the decision about ending his life support, and why Sherry wasn't on his emergency contact list, and it also got me thinking. So to give the strangers I let into my life a peace of mind, I decided to call up Sherry's daughter. She's the only one I still keep in contact with, and ask her if she knew anything about that. She told me that Dad and Sherry had gotten divorced like 2 or 3 months before his car accident, and no one knew because they wanted to keep it between the family. Nobody still knows about the divorce except for Sherry and her kids, me, and now thousands of strangers, LMAO. Also, I do want to tell you guys I did have a makeup quiz when I was in college. It wasn't as grand as the one I was supposed to have, but I really didn't care. I just spent it with the ones I loved dearly. Also, I just want to say for the ones who are calling me psycho, that happened a little over 3 years ago, and I am a totally different person now. I've been going to therapy since before that incident, and I have let go of any demons I had inside of me years ago. I've forgiven my dad, and I don't just focus on the bad things he did to me anymore. I only think about all the good times we had, and when he was a pretty decent father to me. Am I the a-hole for saying that brother-in-law isn't stupid enough to swap his wife? My wife and I, female 30, male 33, have been married for 6 years. I have a good career, but since day one, I told my wife that I didn't want a housewife. I wanted a woman who works and be an equal contributor. She doesn't have to contribute the same monetarily, just same effort. We have a son together who is 5 years old now. My wife works as a waitress and she doesn't make much, but it doesn't matter because, as I said, I make enough to provide for a comfortable life. My wife complains a lot about her job, and I fully get that and always support her to find a new one, or even start an education to get a better one. What I don't support is her insinuating that she was ready to be a stay-at-home mom. Well, I am not ready to have an able-bodied adult to support as a child. When she quit her job, I told her that she should find a new job or we go our separate ways. She got scared and got another waiting job. Our son is well taken care of. I work mostly from home and he has been very happy in his daycare and preschool, making lots of friends. We do the chores evenly and I do all the cooking because it is a good escape from my computer job, while it is boring to my wife who works with food all day. Her sister and husband, female 35, male 45, are in an opposite situation. Her husband owns his own company and he has been begging his wife to quit working and stay with the children. She adamantly refuses, and it has been a subject of contention in their relationship. Her husband thinks that he makes more than enough and the wife loves her career. My wife has made it a habit to make comments about how she should have married a brother-in-law instead, and I married a sister. I made it clear that it wasn't funny, especially when it is in the company of her sister and her husband. She complains how it is unfair that she wants to be a stay-at-home mom but isn't allowed. Last time, it was on Saturday, we were invited for dinner with her sister and her husband. That's when my wife started complaining about her new job, and her sister and husband were very sympathetic. Then she said, "We should just swap spouses here. This is so unfair that I am stuck, and my sister doesn't even know how lucky she is." I was very angry and said, "Well, only an idiot would let your sister go." Everyone chuckled but my wife, and husband said, "Yeah, I would be a moron to let a woman like this go," and kissed his wife. My wife became very silent afterwards and she hasn't spoken to me since. I think I hurt her, and honestly, I think I'm done because I'm exhausted. Your wife was being manipulative. You shut this down. Let her pout. Then tell her you will absolutely not tolerate manipulative behavior going forward. Or be done now. Either way, her behavior needs to be in the past. OP's wife better wake up or she'll find out what it's like to be a single parent rather than a stay-at-home mom. If she thinks her life sucks now, wait till she's a single parent. Not a-hole. Staying at home parenting only works when both sides agree to it. It's not a free get-out-of-working card that you pull and try to manipulate your other half into. In addition to the crap she pulled with a brother-in-law, which is pure disrespect to all the other three at the table, simultaneously insinuating that 1, brother-in-law would have picked her over his wife, 2, that his wife/her sister can be easily replaced, and 3, that her husband, OP, is just as easily replaced for someone with the ability to let her stay at home and be a freeloader. Your response may be harsh, but she deserves it. Not the a-hole, but your relationship is unsustainable as you want different things. Outside of couples counseling, this wedge issue will grow. Lol at wanting different things. She doesn't want to work. What's she realistically going to do? They can split up and she'll be a single mom. Yeah, that'll be less stressful. She might find a man who wants a housewife, and OP would be paying child support and alimony since she earns probably a lot less. I think OP and his wife shouldn't have married because they wanted different things from a partner. I mean, they can't change the past. They're in this situation now. All that can be done is to try and find a compromise to stay the course or go their separate ways and deal with the consequences. People don't know what they don't know, and they probably didn't marry knowing they'd be at this standstill. Edit/mini update. Thank you, everyone. You have provided me good perspective, and I didn't expect so many replies. The majority seem to think like me, so I'm glad that I am not completely off the rocker. I have been thinking about my situation for some years now, and I don't remember when I last was happy. Every time I approached divorce, she would promise to start looking for schools and change careers. It'll probably happen now too, but we need to rip the band-aid off this relationship. Neither is happy. We don't have alimony here, and no child support since our son will have divided time between us. She will have to find a new job or work more hours at her current job to provide for herself until she finds/if she finds a new provider. But that won't be my problem anymore. I am done. Thanks. Next story. Am I the a-hole for thinking that my younger brother does not deserve to have 50% of the family business? I'm 30 years old. I've been working at my family business since I was 13 years old, with about 3 years off from 20 to 23 years old to other jobs and then return again. So about 14 years in total. I work every day about 5 hours to 16 hours shifts, average 60 to 70 hours a week, except for January and February that are almost totally off because of off-season. My brother is 22 years old, going on with his studies, and has not worked even 10 days in total because my parents love to spoil him, and has just started an unpaid internship in IT through my connections. My mother and father are 50% owners each, and I get paid as an employee even though I have many bonuses and investments they made for me. Most of my decisions in the back room are taken by me. And I also take care of almost everything, such as meeting clients, finances, web management, social media posts and support, email support, driving, etc., etc. My mother just told me that when she'll step down, her 50% part of the business is going to my younger brother. I think this is totally not fair. I told her that about everything else, I accept everything to get divided at 50%, but just not for the business. Especially because there wasn't any help coming from him building the business, and won't be any help coming from him in the future, and he'll still get the 50% cut at the end of the day? I love my brother with all of my heart, but I think this is unacceptable. My mother is now really mad at me for not accepting her terms, and I told her that if you go on this way, I'll just start my own business today, and you can do what you want with yours. I would greatly appreciate your thoughts and advice on this, guys. Thank you so much for taking your time to read and reply to my post. Not the a-hole, and I would say it's better to start your exit plan and stop any help you give them, including your brother. Anything they do conditionally will have no value. I would even ask for all benefits denied due to unrecognized work during the time you supported them as a child to be restored. If my sacrifices as a member of the family do not give me a greater share than those who did not sacrifice, it means I was just another employee, and therefore deserved a corresponding compensation. Moreover, I would suggest you tell them you will not discuss any terms unless it's with a lawyer, your own labor lawyer or their business lawyer, ensuring you receive a fair part of the business effectively, not just promises. This reminds me of the dad who gave the business to his other son, not the one who spent years in the company and had the knowledge to run it. Think they were electricians or something similar. Get yourself away from the sinking ship and back yourself. Don't devote your life to something they just give to your brother. Not a-hole. I remember that one. I think they were plumbers or electricians maybe. The son left and started his own company while the golden child ran dad's company into the ground. Dad and golden child assumed the son would just keep going and not care that he got screwed. I remember that one. I felt really bad for the guy who started his own company because his family treated him so poorly. But while I felt bad for him, I just didn't feel badly for his family when their business tanked. You abused your main employee. You can't be truly stunned when they leave. And that was one of the most horrible things I think I've read a family doing to somebody in a long time. There was another story where OP worked his way up the business and didn't go to college, while his brother studied business management. When the brother graduated, the parents gave him control of the business. The OP resigned and started his own business in the same field. Within a few years, OP's company flourished, while the brother ran the business into the ground, mostly because he lost clients due to bad decisions and they moved to OP's new company. Then his parents wanted him to give the brother a partnership in his company, but he refused and offered the brother a job as an employee, in a lower position and at a starting salary. I think the brother refused, and the parents were angry. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not ordering food so I wouldn't have to split the bill? I, 27 male, have been a part of a small friend group, around 8 people total, basically since college. For some background, 2 people from the group, Susan and Greg, are just absolute leeches. Going out for lunch? Expect them to order the most expensive on the menu, then feed you some sob story about their finances and then dump half the bill on you. Last weekend, Dan, one of the people from the group, told me about a casual dinner. I told him how if Susan or Greg were there, I wouldn't be able to come. He tells me that they would be there, but I should just put my opinions aside and come just once. This is kind of where I might be the a-hole. I agree with him and told him I would be there. I show up and we all get to talking. Everyone began putting in their orders. Most of them spent about $40. There were only about 6 people there. When it gets to Susan and Greg, they both order expensive dishes, around $200. When it was my turn to order, everyone looked at me, but I just picked up the menu and pointed a $4 Miller Lite and sent the waiter away. Dan asked why I hadn't ordered anything, and all I said was that I lost my appetite. The other 2 friends got up as well to cancel their orders and just have drinks. After the main courses came out, I saw Susan and Greg picking at their food. The waiter then brings over the check. Greg then grabs the waiter and asks him to split the check 6 ways. I stand up and correct him, saying the check was to be split 3 ways. Greg looks at me confused and asks why, since we always split the bill. I reminded him that 3 of us had not eaten any food, so we would just be paying our drinks. So basically, at the end of the night, Dan, who probably only ate around $50 worth of food, was stuck with a $146.98 check at the end. Yes, I remember the exact number. I swear I saw his jaw dropped when he picked the receipt up. I slid a $10 towards the check, said goodbye everyone, and walked out. The next morning, I found my phone full of texts from Greg and Susan, telling me I was an a-hole for not ordering any food and forcing them to pay more than they had accounted for. I honestly laughed because the steaks alone were more than what they had paid, but to each their own, right? I also got a lot of messages from Dan saying that I could just have not come instead of pulling that stunt and getting him stuck with an outrageous bill. Edit: at this restaurant, the bar is separate, so drinks are on a separate bill, if that makes sense. And if anyone is concerned about leaving a tip, I live in Australia. To clarify some things, 1, 90% of restaurants where I live, they don't do separate checks and might separate the bill for you if you're lucky. By the way, this post is in Australian dollars. 2, Dan could have easily asked Greg and Susan to transfer him the money if he wanted, but it's always been about helping them through their financial hardship even, though they're just using him and keeps dragging me into it. I admit what I did was immature, but I'm tired of being forced to play along. It's his money, and if he wants to spend it on them, that's fine, but I'm not paying for them. 3, also, Dan's a really good friend of mine, albeit blind AF. I was just trying to get him to see what kind of people he was helping. I will admit, it was a tad bit petty. Now for the top comments. I also got a lot of messages from Dan saying that I could have just not come, instead of pulling that stunt and getting him stuck with an outrageous bill. You try that. He didn't let you. This is entirely on him. He fooled around and found out. Not the a-hole. Don't even start me about Susan and Greg. They actually had to pay for their own meal? Poor babies. I think this is extra brilliant, and what a bonus that the other people at the dinner realized what Opie was doing and went along with him. How perfect to get Dan alone stuck with their bill. Maybe he'll stop inviting them, and you can all hang out instead of having to deal with Susan and Greg. Susan and Greg still didn't pay for their own meal. Dan paid 1/3 of each of their meals. They still got a discount. The steaks they ate cost more than they paid per OP. For real, One time a meal with my friends was like $2 more than anyone else's, and I offered to cover my own check because I felt like a mooch. They were like, you're fine. I couldn't imagine ordering that much food and expecting everyone to cover your bill. This is hilarious and a smart overdue move. No prizes for guessing what Dan will order next time. Last story. Am I the a-hole for kicking out my friend after I caught her planning a secret home remodel? So I inherited a house from my dad a few years ago. It's a 3-bedroom place in a nice neighborhood where rent usually goes for about $2,500+ a month. Since I don't pay rent but have to cover upkeep and insurance, I figured having a roommate would be a good idea. One of my close friends who works from home seemed like a good fit. I did the math and decided $800 a month would cover everything comfortably. When I offered her the room, she asked if she could pay $500 a month for the first few months until she got settled in her new job. I agreed because $500 still covered the bills, and I wasn't looking to profit off her. A few months in, she started acting really weird. She'd constantly send me out of the house, to the store, to pick up her boyfriend, to get coffee for us, but she never wanted to come with me. I thought it was odd, but didn't think much of it at first. Then things got really suspicious. She was always video chatting when I wasn't around, and I caught glimpses that looked like she was talking to construction guys. One day, I snooped and found texts between her and several renovation companies asking for quotes to remodel my house. She was saving money on rent to secretly plan a home remodel in my house, which I did not approve of. She even tried gifting me a week's stay in Vegas a few weeks ago, probably hoping I'd leave so she could start the remodel. I told her I don't like to leave for that long, which now I'm super glad I did. When I confronted her, she swore she wasn't actually going to go through with it, but I don't believe her. The texts and video chats were pretty convincing, and I saw my address in every quote. I kicked her out because I couldn't trust her anymore. Also, haven't spoken since she left. My house has a lot of sentimental value to me, and I love its antique charm. I'm so glad I trusted my gut and stayed. So, am I the a-hole for kicking her out? Why would you do that? Claim part ownership of the house because she invested in it? This is exactly what I thought. Yeah, assuming she did. Not only could you sue her into oblivion, you could probably also sue the construction company for not checking ownership status. Paint and cosmetics or whatever. Knocking down a wall is a huge no-no. You are the owner, but she is a tenant. I'm just a tenant, so I can't alter my place. Considering that she was attempting to do it behind your back, you made a correct decision. If she had talked to you, perhaps you two might have decided on anything to modify or nothing at all. Not a-hole. Check your credit, check the deed to your home. Get cameras, and if you saw the contractor's name, call them and let them know you are the owner of the home and never approved of any work. She's doing this because she wants to claim that she made a substantial investment and now she's a part owner. Kick her out. She made or attempted to make alterations to your house without your consent. Also, please tell me you had her sign a lease, even if it was a basic template from online. Either way, go to a landlord/tenant lawyer and get this sorted out right away. You have no time to waste here. So let's say she was going for that and wanted to stake in equity. OP takes her to court as well as the contractor. The first thing a lawyer would ask is if the renter ever got written permission of any kind. Then they would ask the contractors if they have confirmed ownership. Since both of those would be no, she would lose and probably be sued to revert it, and the contractors would have a huge asterisk in their records. I ruined my wife's life. Again. Original post. It feels depressingly sad that I feel that I have to turn to random internet strangers for some sort of validation in my rant. My apologies in advance as I try to keep this as vague as possible. I, male 43, tried to do my best to provide for my wife, female 38, and 2 kids, 3, 5, as well as my mother-in-law, and would like to think I'm doing a decent job. Over the years, I worked to improve our family's living situation. Not only did I complete another bachelor's and recently master's in a STEM-related degree, I at the same time worked 2 full-time jobs while completing my second bachelor's and put my wife through school as well. She completed a degree where she could make good money, about 60 to 70K a year in a healthcare field that always has jobs available. But with the birth of our 2 kids, she has since gave up on her career to be a stay-at-home mom for the time being. At first, it was a struggle while I was finishing up my master's. Once I completed it, after our youngest turned 3, my career took a jump up. and we are now able to afford our single-income household in a more feasible manner. We're far from rich, but do okay for a single-income family of 4, a little north of 150K base plus bonuses. The past year, life was overwhelming for my wife. So even though I now work 75% from home, I budgeted to hire a daytime nanny to help her around the house with one child, while the other is in school now. My day starts every day around 5:30 to 6 a.m. I get the house ready for the day before the nanny comes at 8 a.m. I get our oldest up and ready for school, breakfast made, and plan out my day, bringing our oldest to drop off and be home in time to let the nanny in. My most recent task at work has me grounded for the next 2 months, meaning I am now 100% work from home. While this is nice, I am busy in meetings all day as my role manages teams on a global scale, as I oversee projects from my industry. For the past 1.5 months, I realized my wife, as much as she says her life is stressful at home, starts at 10 a.m. I asked my mother-in-law and nanny if this was always the case after a week or so of working from home, and they both responded more or less. Sometimes earlier, sometimes later. My wife literally wakes up and cooks, and then scrolls through her phone or shops from home. Which brings me to my gripe. I am glad I am able to provide her that sort of life, since we both grew up lacking in means. I get the possibility of postpartum depression, the stress of having kids, the feeling of being unfulfilled, the fact that I probably am a crappy husband. But for what it's worth, everything is taken care of and then some. I manage the house's finances. She claimed she was too busy to do so. Pay all the household bills. I pay my own personal bills. I pay her bills. Track and perform all the upkeep of our house appliances, cars, pets, etc. And I also help pay for my mother-in-law's medical bills and car note. But apparently, my life is on easy street compared to hers. I can't decompress to her because it seems like she always feels the need to one-up me. I had a bad day, but she had it worse, because I'm lucky I got to go away and work. My feet hurt from walking all day during work travel is nothing compared to her standing and cooking with a child clinging to her. For the past 2 or so years, I've been told I ruined her life, her opportunities, etc. But when I reminded her of what she says, she denies and dodges accountability. My mother-in-law has brought me aside and stated she's noticed a change in both myself and my wife. I have a greater attachment to my kids. And heck, I've hugged the dogs and talked to them more about my life than to my wife. I honestly feel like I am in emotional survival mode, as I am one step from moving up the career ladder, and one step away from finding love and comfort from the bottom of a whiskey bottle. I'm sure I'll be hearing from the manly men of Reddit about how I'm simping, but I'm not a machine. I just want to know and feel that someone I prioritize, aside from my kids, appreciates and loves me for what I do. I'm sure I'll hear from the stay-at-home moms of Reddit, which is fine. I grew up in a single parent/mother household. It's not easy, and honestly, with the help of her mother and a nanny Monday to Friday for one toddler, while another child is at school, can you honestly tell me she's having the typical stay-at-home mother experience? Because neither my friends and colleagues who are single parents can say she is. I'm sure the masses of holier-than-thou Redditors will consider this a poorly written fanfic, but it is what it is. To add more context, 1. Never cheated. I do work in an industry that has a large female population, but I'm literally an open book with work, name, colleagues, and staff under me. She has access to my work agendas and correspondence if she really wanted to snoop. But on that note, she still doesn't know what exactly I do for a living at this time. 2. We as a whole family, her parents and mine, have tried to get her to go to therapy, but she refuses or skirts around the issue. 3. Aside from my coming from a single mother household per se, my biological dad was present in my life. She has had both parents in a reportedly monogamous marriage for over 40 years. 4. I have tried to talk to her about everything and my own feelings, but again, one-upmanship tends to be the trend here. 5. What I am getting out of the marriage was asked. Now, aside from my 2 beautiful kids, I've been asking myself that same question. We have a near non-existent intimate life, mainly since last year. I always figured maybe it's part of depression or whatever she may be going through. Maybe I'm just not attractive enough, or just horrible in bed because of my health conditions. I'm not some supermodel husband, but temptation and opportunity does knock, and I can perform still. But I never give in. Because as cliche as it sounds, I honestly do love my wife and want to only be with her. 6. I'll give credit where credit is due, as I don't want to sound biased. When I say she wakes up and cooks, She cooks for everyone in the house. Myself, kids, mother-in-law, and even nanny. Aside from breakfast, she cooks all meals and snacks. I typically fast until lunchtime, and our oldest tends to eat a small simple breakfast in case they don't like what school serves that morning. She does load both the kids and her laundry, but seldom folds and puts them up. I typically do my own, and the rest of my clothes I dry clean because they're work clothes. She does keep track of our pantry and fridge, but after she makes the list, I'm the one who goes out and buys everything if not delivered. She does clean our bathrooms and house 50% of the time. The other 50 is done by either mother-in-law or myself, or sometimes nanny if she feels like being extra helpful. 7. Prior to nanny, my mother-in-law was the main help for my wife up until she had unexpected medical needs. So I opted to hire a nanny to help them both, more so when mother-in-law is having treatments and recovering. Now for the top comments before reading the updates. Woman here, if you ever divorce, you are completely welcome to come and ruin my life like that. Straight man here, but I'll also take this type of life ruining if you're willing. I am married, but I am gonna ask my husband if we can adopt you so you can ruin our life. I prefer my children ready to leave the house. Hi, stay-at-home mom here as predicted. She's taking advantage of you. I know taking care of kids is hard, but what is she actually doing? Because from where I'm sitting, it reads like you do everything while she just gripes and complains. Usually to you, about you. Sounds like she's checked out of the marriage and parenting role, and just hasn't asked for a divorce because you're bankrolling her. I don't know if it's PPD, generic depression, or something else. She's miserable and making you miserable alongside her. She needs to either get herself some help, get a part-time job at the very least, or get the heck out. Sit down with her when you have the time in between doing literally everything, and try to get to the bottom of things. Express your concerns in a non-accusatory manner, and ask her what's up with her, and how she feels things can be mended. Honestly, if she refuses to talk, blames everything on you still, and/or expects you to put even more work in, your marriage is over. You would be amazed at how much less stress you have when you don't have someone dragging you down and making you feel like crap along the way. I second all of this. I'm also a stay-at-home mom. I don't know why OP's wife doesn't get a job if she's so miserable staying at home. One kid is in school, the other has a nanny. She has life on easy mode. Now for the first update. Not sure if anyone would read this, but thank you for those who have reached out and chit-chatted. While I know I've kept my newfound friends here updated, I figured I'd just update my post and keep it short. I showed my wife my post the following weekend, and she read it and all the comments. Long story short, argument. She left our house to stay with her sister, and I've been a single parent since. It's sad to say, aside from the good nights to our kids, it's all pretty much the same routine. Nothing much else to say other than thank you for all the kind words of encouragement. Just need to add, this post got bigger than I expected from a venting post, but I've responded to a few comments. Nonetheless, thank you for the comments and DMs, and more so for the offers to let me ruin your life. Haha. It's been the highlight of my days/night as I sit here drinking with my dog, while everyone else is asleep. Now for the second update. First of all, thank you for all the comments and DMs. Some context and clarification since admittingly my post was emotionally charged, since I typed it up after another argument. Post-birth, our kid's pediatrician's office gave my wife those postpartum depression screening forms, and during the time of both, she scored pretty high and was suggested to see a therapist. With our second child, she scored significantly higher, and we, or should I say, I made an effort to get her the help she needs. She refused, so entered mother-in-law and nanny for support. I know what people will say/think, but this is one of the reasons I am not 100% ready to just give up and file our life together away. Also, I know silently suffering in the near and long run for our kids' future will not add to a healthy atmosphere, but neither would a bitter and hate-filled divorce. I know some have compared it to the ripping off a bandage, saying it'll hurt at first but then pain goes away, but I'd rather try to spare my kids thinking that their parents ended up hating each other because of them, or something along those lines. I've told a few people I talked to in DM since my last post. A little more insight in my personal life. Prior to my promotion, I was a project manager, managing teams and budgets, so out of habit I planned for a lot of what-ifs. That being said, I made a number of contingency plans if things sadly went south. So yes, I have talked to a lawyer. 3 actually. know our rights and what each of us are entitled to. Have a draft settlement created and on hold until I feel I need to use it. I know what I want, and I'm willing to offer more than what is fair for our kids' well-being, but also have a plan if we end up going to court. It's 100% on me that I'm suffering in silence, but I'm too stubborn to just give up. So while I am venting, I don't expect anyone to feel sorry for me. I endure it to keep the norm our kids know, ensure my mother-in-law's treatments go uninterrupted, and of course the hope my wife would finally be open to give therapy a shot and climb together to a better place. Thank you all again. I just wanted to update those who have been kind enough to check up via DM and comments. Apologies in advance for the lengthy post. It's a bit of irony and coincidence that I made a follow-up from the update on May 6 I made on my original post during Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. But I could really use another outlet outside of my therapist. My apologies if this isn't the storybook ending/destroying of a relationship people were hoping for. To save you a read, wife left, came back like nothing happened. She made it about her. Nothing's changed. I'm continuing to be suffering mentally knowing nothing will change while trying to keep it together for our kids. Lots of takeout. The day after she packed up and left, my wife attempted to come back and take the kids with her to her sisters. Naturally, I was against this, and thankfully so was her whole family, including her sister. Not only was it not fair to our kids for her to sweep them away into a home that's not theirs, but to put that financial and housing stress on the rest of her family since she doesn't work. And her sister and her family, husband and 3 kids, stays with her dad in the house they grew up in. After a little over a week of being away, I guess she cooled off, so she just decided that it would be fine if she walked in the door with her bags, as if she just came back from Target. She came into my office while I was working and angrily stared at me while I sat on a conference call meeting with my team, and I couldn't just jump off as this is a busy time of the quarter for us. I guess that didn't sit well with her, because once I took off my headset and closed my laptop, she started yelling at me about how much I really don't care about her and her well-being overall. At that moment, I couldn't do anything more than look at her and just shake my head. Mother-in-law came in after hearing my wife yelling and pulled her away, telling her to not bother me, while our nanny kept our youngest away from it all on the other side of the house. That night after the kids were put to bed, I sat in my office by myself with a drink, as I have been doing for the past nights, and my wife came in. We talked, we argued, we cried, we drank. One thing led to another and we were in bed. I wish I could say that was our making up, but the next sobering morning as we laid there, she went on about how hard it was for her the time she was gone. Literally, it was about her struggles, staying at her family house in her old room with her dad and sister's family. How lucky I am to be able to stay here and do this and that, and buy this or do that, and not stress as much as they did. How easy my and everyone else's in our family lives are compared to hers, even though we had similar upbringings. My mind and heart broke that morning. I've been spiraling down since then, and this last week I made another attempt to reconcile and talk things out. But I was met with a shouting match while trying to express my current stress and anxieties with life and work in general. Wife, well, do you know how hard this is all for me? You're supposed to help me be happy. Me, so when it comes to my happiness, stress, needs, and overall well-being, F me, get over it, right? Wife, we all have our own problems. You need to figure it out and get over them. I don't know who the woman I am at home with is, but that wasn't the woman I married and vowed to spend my life with and raise our kids together. Since that conversation, I've been noticeably distant with her. I've been sleeping in my office or in the couch or with my kids in their bed after putting either one of them to sleep. Still doesn't change her starting her day at 10 a.m. and sitting on her phone talking to her mom groups between cooking meals with the kids in both mother-in-law and nanny's care. Nothing has changed, and I doubt anything will change. Sadly, I think even if we got a divorce, nothing would change or feel different anyway, since during my wife's leaving, the day seemed like any other day, except with a little more takeout than usual. My main fear there isn't that I wouldn't just lose my wife and lose my kids in a process. So I guess it's sad to say the grand finale to my story, with like a lot of men and some women I've talked to here, I'll just continue to smile and suffer in silence. You are teaching your kids that a home without love is okay. Stop. If nothing changed with her gone, divorce her and get over it. Then start living for yourself and your kids. You really are just being a coward at this point. Why would you not just get a divorce, for Pete's sake? If it's for the kids, this is the worst thing for the kids. Imagine growing up thinking this is what adult relationships are supposed to be like. Those kids are being programmed to accept terrible relationships as the norm. I feel so bad for them. Nothing has changed because you won't change it. It all starts and ends with you. Until you realize you're the only one who can change your own destiny, nothing will ever change. Take control. Take back your life. My parents had a toxic marriage and my sibling and I begged them to get a divorce. My dad finally moved out and everyone breathed a sigh of relief, including my dad. My parents got along great after that and everyone was happy. Staying together for the children just makes everyone miserable. I've seen more ugly divorces than good ones like the one you described. OP's wife seems manipulative as hell. She will 100% poison these kids' mind in order to make herself out to be the victim, while he is the villain. Last story. I'm ghosting my girlfriend and I don't care if I'm wrong for it anymore. I'm just done. It's stupid, it's dumb, it's a bad reason, but I cannot freaking take it anymore. My blood pressure has legit been spiking over this recently, and I cannot keep this up. I cannot do it. We've been together for close to a year and this problem has only come up over the past 2 months. She never did this crap when we first got together, and I don't know why she freaking started. But I'm so sick of it, it's crazy. Whenever we get food, she always eats off my plate, no matter what it is or where we are. The only thing that stops her is if I order the same exact thing as her, and she's taken to ordering things that I cannot eat, so I can't do that. If I tell her to stop in the moment, she just laughs, and when I talk to her about it privately, she blows me off because it isn't a big deal. But it is to me, goddammit. I have a history of food insecurity which makes it a lot worse, and I've tried to explain that. But then she's snapping that I'm being condescending, and I just can't. Most recently, she had a plate full of her pizza on the table and had eaten over half of my medium pepperoni. And I was so mad I just grabbed 2 slices off her plate without asking, which made her go into shock for a moment, before screaming and acting like I had freaking slapped her in the face or something, spitting and going red in the face. You don't even like olives, you freaking a-hole. You always have to be right about everything, you prick. You can't just let me have this one freaking thing. As if I had been the one consistently stealing from her for months. I just went cold, tossed the pizza back on her plate, not at her, as she was in my face, screaming and a ways away from the plate. And then I just left the apartment. She claims there was no reason to get violent over text, but I knew then that I was freaking done. I've never raised a hand nor my voice to her, and lightly tossing pizza on a plate across the room while she screams into my face is violent? Nah, I'm getting away from her. She's now tried to apologize, but I'm not going near her again, or answering any messages/calls from her. God only knows if she'll decide to call the cops and have me arrested for my violent behavior, and I'm not chancing it. If I'm so freaking awful and violent, she can get away from me and be safe to steal constantly from other people. I know ghosting is wrong. I've been through it before, but after that, I don't know if I trust myself to speak to her cordially again. I want to scream and curse back, but that isn't who I am and not how I was raised. I don't like the person she's turned into, and I hate the person she's turning me into. Now for the top advice. You're good. She knows what you did. She knows how much it bothered you. She decided it was fun to do it anyway. Just block her on everything and move on. She gets her kicks from passive-aggressive behavior, and it's bullying too. Lose her. It's abuse, and it gets worse over time. I was trapped in a relationship with a woman similar to this. It wasn't about sharing food, but she'd used this technique in other ways. And over the course of 3 years, it evolved into a form of Stockholm Syndrome, in which she was gaslighting me, then verbally, and finally physically abusing me, until I left. I'm actually texting with one of my best friends that I helped get away from a woman like this about a year ago. He is still struggling. He definitely has PTSD. He is falling into the deepest depression I've ever seen him in, and it's just a constant effort to try to pull him out. When someone you love so much messes with your sense of self and reality, it can truly break you. I hope you're happy and okay now. Update. Wife 36 female wanted open marriage. After I 38 male started dating, she wants to add more rules. What would you do in my position? Original post. 2.5 years ago, my wife Sarah 36 female asked me to open our marriage. She strongly implied the alternative was divorce. After thinking it through, I said yes, primarily because we do have 2 children. I worked long hours, and divorce sounded horrible. So I set up some ground rules. Not bringing dates into our house, no dating mutual friends, acquaintances, family members, colleagues, keeping things private. For the next 2 years, I focused on my job and on my kids. I worked long hours. Little free time I had, I devoted to my kids. I didn't have the time for dating, so I wasn't even trying. I moved to another room because the thought of Sarah sleeping with another man than sleeping in my bed felt horrible. Our relationship became purely transactional. We became partners at raising kids. I didn't want to know anything about her intimate life. This summer, I managed to fulfill my financial goals. I do not have any debt whatsoever. Both of my kids have enough money in their college fund, and all I have to do is to keep adding some savings every month into the fund I made for their first home deposits. So I did some math and decided to cut my work from 74 hours to just 30 per week. Sarah wanted to get indebted again to buy another house and a new car. I said no. I used my free time to finally have a vacation I really needed. Took my older son with me to tour to the US together. Did some renovation work in our house, turned basement into a man cave. Starting working out, play sports, leading a healthier life. Then I actually started trying to land a date. For me, just hooking up with somebody is not my thing. I want to at least be a friend before that. To go out together, watch movies, have fun, and be intimate. So I dated a couple of women and found a Jane with whom I clicked. With Jane, I was going out to concerts, art galleries, comic cons, movies, and we would boink too. Sarah wanted to talk about my dates. I said no. Then I caught Sarah snooping through my phone and we had a very strongly worded argument. Now Sarah wants to update the terms of our open marriage. She wants us to repair our marriage by going to the counselor. She wants us to sleep in the same room, to go outside, and have fun together. Our outside of marriage relationships are to be strictly physical and nothing else. And we are to talk about our partners. I told her that I'm content with the situation as it is, and I don't mind if she finds a partner to go out with. I encouraged her too. And I don't want to talk about our partners. She's holding her ground. At this point, I'm split between trying to fix our marriage and handing her the divorce papers. I need an advice, guys. P.S. I just wanted to add that I only started working 74 hours a week after she decided to open our marriage. Before that, I was working around 50 hours a week. Wasn't spending my time at bars and clubs either. Helped with chores as much as I could, and I was being home and available every weekend. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Just get a divorce already. They've been divorced, without the paperwork or the physical distance. They've both been emotionally checked out for years. You two didn't open your marriage. You ended your marriage 2.5 years ago to become roommates and co-parents. That's all the two of you are now. But neither of you seemed to care about that until you got a girlfriend. You didn't find a partner, you found a relationship. That scares the heck out of your wife because she's reading the writing on a wall. That's exactly what happened. His wife wanted partners and never thought he would find a girlfriend. With all the hours he was working, she probably didn't expect him to find a partner either. Now that he's opened up his side finally, she's unhappy/jealous. Should have divorced her when she wanted to open up the marriage. Her plan was for her to fool around, not you finding a girlfriend. I'm really glad that I didn't divorce at that point. I grew up in a very poor family, had a smarts but couldn't afford a college. Had to struggle from the beginning to actually make it. And I don't want my kids to have to go through that. By staying in the marriage, I could keep working hard while still seeing my kids. And I could save enough to give them a chance in life with free college and going to save for their deposits as well. So I actually do not have any regrets about that decision. I understand that part, and good for you for recognizing the cost of divorce. Heck of a job by you to put your kids and their security first. Another part of putting your kids first is modeling healthy adult relationships. If you and your wife are peaceful at home and the kids are relatively in the dark about your bedroom life, then fine. But I have my doubts, especially now that your wife is not the only one dating. If the home starts to become tense and a battleground, divorce eventually becomes a kindness to give those kids. Boys figured out something was off when we started sleeping in separate rooms, but I just couldn't keep sleeping with her. Still, up to this point, it wasn't a tense home. My only regret, not being able to spend more time with my kids. But hey, can't have it all. In turn, they will never know what student debt is. Now, this home is turning into tense battleground, and that's something I do not want for my children. Your wife is a hypocrite. You are emotionally numbed out. You agreed to open up the marriage upon her request, which was a really terrible idea. That would have been the time to do the work you both should have done to fix this. Marriages get stale from time to time. She needed to turn towards you, not put her emotional energy into new dick. Sorry about a crass language. I don't mean any disrespect, but you need a wake-up call. You do not have a marriage. It's a business arrangement now. So what's the point? Pretty sure you know the answer. Good luck, OP, and I hope you find what you are looking for. Your wife is a hypocrite. You are emotionally numbed out. Yeah, recently I noticed that too. Things which used to drive an emotional response from me are now leaving me feeling nothing. My friend died. I went to his funeral at all and didn't feel anything. Just felt like crap for not feeling anything. Nobody notices because I act the emotional responses. Have been planning to see a therapist. Thank you. This isn't a marriage. You two are nothing other than partners in the business of your family and have been since she decided to open the marriage like that. Credit to you for the work you've done, and I'm sure that having reliable support at home for the kids is why you were able to work 74 hours a week. But this isn't a romantic partnership, and seems to have not been for a while. Also, I totally understand the line you've drawn around not wanting to hear from your wife about it. She wanted to open a relationship? You let it happen. She wants to turn it into a shared kink? Nope. 14 hours Monday to Friday, 4 hours Saturday. I couldn't pull that off without her taking care of most chores and kids. Yes, by keeping things private, we became just partners in business. I don't care about my business partner's for life. Now for the update. Me and my wife Sarah had 2 sessions with a couples counselor. Counselor was being very dedicated and professional. However, Sarah kept making demands which felt very unreasonable and unfair. She wants to keep an open relationship which is only about the physical act. She doesn't want to find a job and keep working. She wants us to buy a new house. And every variation, she stubbornly wasn't to have 2 out of 3 of these things. Today during the counseling, she threatened divorce. After counseling, she said counselor was taking my side and wanted to change to another counselor. Although I think counselor was just trying to be fair and find a compromise. I had a talk with a lawyer and started divorce proceedings. She will get the papers in a couple of days. I will give her 2 months to start earning on her own. After that, I'm not giving any money whatsoever to her anymore. Divorce is definitely your best option. Good luck. Big time. When I read his original post, it was very clear that OP's wife was only concerned with her own wants, not what is best for their family. I'm glad he's putting his foot down on this. Some people truly believe the grass is greener, not realizing it's green where nurtured. My grandpa used to always say the grass is always greener, but you still gotta mow the damn lawn. Good for you. I don't see what you got out of the relationship at this point. She seemed like a gold digger, to be honest. Now with Jane, don't rush into anything, I would say. Take things one step at a time. Get to know each other well before either of you get hurt or you end up in another failed relationship/marriage. She wants and wants and wants. Nowhere did I see anything like she realized what was going to happen. That's because she doesn't care. She's using him. Last story. Update. Am I the a-hole for being upset my wife, we're currently separated, didn't tell me she was diagnosed with cancer? Original post. My parents were well off and worked hard, but they were neglectful towards me. By the time I was 10, they decided I didn't need a nanny anymore and then I didn't have parental figures. They spent all of their time and energy at work and didn't have time for me at all. When I met my wife, she was a vibrant, intelligent, caring woman. She would give you the shirt off her back. We spent hours and hours together talking about everything and anything. But it slowly died down. She would come home from work, crawl immediately into bed and watch TikToks for the next 3 hours. She wouldn't engage, would barely do anything, and only did chores sometimes and ended up paying for someone to do her share. She would always say she's tired and then stay up all night sometimes or sleep for 18 hours. It was awful to see her glued to her phone or her computer instead of engaging with me. So I asked for separation. It was really hard because she cried and begged me not to. And I still loved her, but being with her was like a flashback to my parents. We both knew that separations basically always end in divorce. An old friend of my wife's recently reached out to me and cussed me out. She told me that my wife had cancer and how dare I leave her during a tough time. I had no idea she had cancer. I asked my wife why she hid it from me, and she said that I was divorcing her and she didn't want to guilt trip me into staying or be manipulative. I asked her how long she had known. She found out 3 weeks after we separated. I told her she should have told me. I'd noticed her hair seemed thinner and she just seemed frailer overall, but she brushed it off as just stress. Honestly, I'm really upset that she didn't tell me. Do I have a right to be? Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Okay, I'm getting a super weird vibe from the part where you compare your probably sick and stressed partner to your absent parents. But whatever. You're the a-hole. You told her that you could not live with the way she was. Whether she was being lazy or stressed or had cancer back then too, you didn't want to take over that care for her. So why would she tell you? She needs help and care, but you already told her with your actions that it is not something you wish to do. That weirded me out a bit. I mean, she kept telling you that she was just stressed, and you couldn't even say, I don't know, you seem different. Can I help you with anything? Maybe you should see a different doctor. I'm worried about you. Nothing? He did though. He said he made her go to the doctor many times, and they found nothing wrong, and the wife refused to go again. What else should he have done? Bruh, my wife essentially underwent 180 physically and emotionally. Huge red flag. I pushed her to go to the doctor. They said she was just lazy. WTF? Somehow this correlates to my absentee parents. You should have gone to therapy for that already. Anyway, so I left her. Good, she deserves better. The wife's condition to me sounds way more like mental illness than physical ones. Once you rule out a physical cause, your next step should have been psychiatry. Of course, any doctor says someone is lazy isn't worth listening to in my opinion. Sounds like they may missed the cancer when it first started. Edit. Only now did her hair start to thin and she looked weak. She looked obviously ill. For 3 years before that, she wouldn't get out of bed and alternatively sleep through the weekend and stay up on weekdays. I did all of this chores, but she felt guilty and hired a housekeeper for cleaning. I did all of the cooking. What I saw was a profound disinterest in me. She didn't want to do anything with me. She wouldn't go on walk with me. She wouldn't go out. She would just read a book or just lie in bed watching TikToks. Her daily screen time was 14 to 16 hours. I made doctor's appointments. I cooked food. I tried to get her up. At some point, she just wouldn't even entertain going to the doctor. After years of her telling me that there was nothing wrong with her, doctors saying she was lazy, and blood tests showing no issues and still lying in bed, I was tired. If we had known that her body was shutting down, of course I wouldn't have left. I just wished she actually went to the appointments I had set up before I asked for a separation. I am going to help her any way I can. Now for the update. I talked to my wife. I called her and asked if she wanted to talk. She said okay. When I came over, I noticed that nobody has been over in at least a few weeks. My wife is a clean person, so there wasn't a mess, but it was clear that she was doing it on her own. I apologized for everything. I asked her why she didn't tell me about the cancer. She said that she felt guilty because she thought we would go through all the effort and find out she was just lazy, and I would resent her. Then she thought when we separated that she could just go to a few appointments to show she was physically fine, but try to change on her own to stop being lazy. Then she found out that she had cancer. She felt really bad because she hadn't gone to any appointments I had made. She felt guilty because she knew I would come back if I knew, and she didn't want me to sacrifice for her when she had dismissed my concerns for years. She sobbed and said that she really felt like she was just being lazy and tired like before. I asked her what she was talking about. A few times during school, she had these intense periods of being really tired and unable to get out of bed. Her parents took her to a doctor, but there was nothing wrong. It wasn't caused by anxiety and she didn't feel depressed, just incredibly physically tired. Her parents and doctor dismissed it as laziness. I don't like her parents. I said it didn't sound like laziness. It sounded like a real medical issue. I'm going to help her figure it out, but to me, it sounded like an autoimmune disease or flare-up. I told her that I always believe her. I believed her when she said she was just lazy after 3 years of trying to get her to a doctor. And I would have believed her if she had been honest with me and told me about what she went through as a kid. She just kept sobbing, and I comforted her. After she cried, I checked her fridge for food. There were only a couple of things in the fridge, including some frozen food I had dropped off before. I asked if she wanted me to go grocery shopping or come over to my apartment for some food. She chose my apartment. I grabbed a few things for her and I took a laundry basket of dirty clothes to wash. At my apartment, I drew her a bath and cooked dinner for us. She didn't have any clean pajamas, so she wore mine. Then we had dinner. She kept saying thank you and I told her she didn't have to thank me. She's my wife. Of course I'll take care of her through cancer. She said she made me do all of the chores before too, and she didn't want me to go through that again. I told her that she was sick and tired, and I can do everything again if she stays honest with me about how she feels and doesn't dismiss it as her being lazy. We ended up cuddling, and she fell asleep pretty quickly. She's been asleep and awake through today and yesterday. She's been a bit clingy to me, and she looks a lot more comfortable. She's probably going to stay in my apartment, so we'll have to figure out how to break the lease on hers. I'm not going to divorce or abandon her. She needs a lot of support. Damn, being dismissed and being told she's just lazy did a real number on her. Poor woman dismisses herself so no one else does. I'm glad you stuck with her and got her to talk about it. It must have been so difficult for both of you. Hopefully she'll enter therapy and work through that damage she internalized. She was so afraid of being rejected and called lazy that she tried to go through cancer alone. Stupid parents. And the doctors, who shrugged and called her lazy. Reddit lost its collective mind in your last post, but you did nothing wrong, and you're doing everything right. Good job, dude. OP, has her doctor checked her for chronic fatigue syndrome? That's a real thing, in addition to her most recent cancer diagnosis. Hope she recovers, and the two of you get back on track, if appropriate. My heart, thank you for the update. You are a great husband to her. I'm wishing you and your wife all the very best, in sickness and in health. Update, am I the a-hole for leaving my wife over a computer? Original post. I, 26 male, have been married to my wife Emma for 4 years. She was a social work major who I met in one of my gen ed classes. I explained to her I was a mechanical engineering major. She then asked if I could tutor her in math, and that's how we began dating. Afterwards, I decided to get my master's in Japanese to help me gain more career opportunities. My wife thought it was a silly idea and said she wouldn't be funding it, so then we decided to keep our finances separate. It wasn't a big deal since I was still working anyways. I just had less free time. So, she was making more than me during this time. It paid off, and I recently landed a high-paying job, and with that came more stress due to me having to travel to Japan often. I've really been wanting to get into gaming, so I invested in computer parts costing around $1,500. Once I took the parts out of the box, my wife noticed the receipt and asked how I could be irresponsible with my money. She assumed I still made the same amount, but when I told her that I make triple that amount now, she began giving me the silent treatment. During this time, I began to notice my things were going missing. I wanted to go fishing with some friends one time, and when I was looking for my rods, she must have noticed and said she had given them to her uncle. I told her not to take my stuff without asking, but didn't mind too much because they were old, so I just bought some more. Another time, I was about to go to the gym and I was looking for my pre-workout. I always keep 3 jars. I luckily had a can of Monster and that helped. I asked my wife when she got home from work and she said she gave them to her cousin. I asked her to reimburse me because they cost $50 a jar, and she said I make enough to replace them and just ignored me for the rest of the day. One day when she thought I was asleep, she was talking to someone on the phone, explaining how she's going to move her parents into our house. She had to explain this to me. We only have 3 rooms. One is her office, one is my office/game room, and the other is our bedroom. She told the person on the phone, who I assume is her sister, that she's going to give my gaming setup to her brother to make room and that I'll get over it eventually. So today I left work early to catch her in the middle of her plans. And when I walked in our apartment, her and her brother were then placing everything into a box. I asked what was going on, and my wife, whose face was pale, said she was cleaning when her brother came by. I asked him did he plan on taking my computer. Of course he denied. So I went into the room to get the iPad we share. And I looked through the texts on there, and it clearly shows my wife telling him when to pick it up, and to deny that he had it. I told him to get out, and asked her why does she think she's so entitled to my stuff. I've never yelled at her, and I guess this scared her because she began to cry. She ended up packing a bag and went to stay with her sister. While she was out, I picked up a lock from my office. Her sister texted me calling me an a-hole. I'm beginning to think I could have handled this better. I'm looking for advice. Now for the top comments before reading the update. You're not leaving her over a computer. You're leaving her for repeatedly stealing and lying to you. Get the heck out. Stealing, lying, making major life decisions without you. Not being supportive of you when you decide to get more education. And then punishing you when you get a good job as a result. Not respecting you as a human being. Yeah, saying leaving her over a computer is a ridiculous way to put it. The computer is just the straw that broke the camel's back. The room thing would be my breaking point. Let him move in, cause I'm out of here. Hopefully you can afford a monthlies. Not the a-hole, but your soon-to-be ex is a spiteful bee. Put everything but the necessities in a paid storage unit, and cut your losses with this horrible person. Not the a-hole. Sounds like she doesn't respect you. Maybe also a bit bitter, as it sounds she got really funny once she learned you were earning more than she thought. Agreed. She mocked him for taking courses to learn Japanese to better his job prospects. When it played out exactly as he knew it would, she got petty. He made her look like a moron without meaning or trying to, and she took the vindictive road about it. Now for the update. After about a week staying at her sister's house, Emma called me and asked if we could meet up. I agreed and we met at a park. She apologized for everything and said she thought she was doing what was best for everybody. I asked what if I just gave her expensive makeup to my sister. She admitted that she would be upset. I then asked why did she think it would be any different for me. She didn't have a reason, and her sister told her how unfair she was being to me. We decided to give it another chance and she moved back in. It was going good until she started moving her things into my office. I asked her what she was doing, and she explained how she needed a room for her parents. I told her no, and that's not happening. I grabbed her things and placed them back into her office. I told her that they could move in, but my space has to remain untouched. On top of that, we need to determine how bills are going to be paid if they stayed. She called me a selfish jerk, and then ran back to her sister's. I guess her sister told her she was being inconsiderate once again, and apparently they got into an argument because the sister refuses to take their parents in and said she's tired of hearing about her problems. I agree with her. Her sister has 4 kids. Her sister called and told me everything and said that Emma went to her parents' house. I tried to call her, but she ignored my phone calls for 2 weeks. So I decided I couldn't live like this, filed for divorce, and handed to her at her parents' house. She called and begged me to forgive her. I told her I'm not sure if I can. She refused to sign it until we go to counseling, which I refused, and said she had 2 weeks to suggest that. So now I live alone. She still refuses to sign the papers, but that doesn't stop the divorce. It just makes it harder. You know, your wife has not learned anything, has not changed as she promised, and still feels entitled to your money and your things. She's disrespectful and communicative and frankly quite mean. Stand your ground. You're doing the right thing, not the a-hole. She had a problem supporting Opie while he was taking steps to advance his career, which fortunately he didn't need. However, has no problem with stealing from him once his hard work paid off. Good for Opie for getting away from her. I mean, if we were just dating then, I would consider it, because I have my own loans to pay off and bills to pay and other responsibilities. But if we were married, then I would probably create a plan to help as much as possible with his studies. However, if I didn't support him financially because we're just dating, then I wouldn't start being a witch once I find out he makes triple than I, or make major life-changing decisions. If anything, I would be happy and won't ask to change a thing, since it was his money and hard work that provided for him. So she didn't change at all and was trying to do what she wanted at your expense. Yeah, get that divorce done. She's a POS. She wanted to live with her parents, and now she can in their house. What doesn't get explicitly spelled out in these posts, but I think is a factor, is that she refused to fund his language lessons, resulting in them keeping their finances separate. Then she simultaneously found out that she was wrong. It wasn't silly, and that since he didn't tell her about the financial change, he must plan to continue keeping the finances separate. Basically, she didn't like reaping what she'd sown, and her solution to this was to secretly take things away from him. Now put that behavior into context them eventually becoming parents. This is a don't walk, run situation. Bullet bomb dodged by Opie. Minimizing her insane red flags, no accountability, and holding insane grudges over his reasonable responses. This woman's malfunctioning nightmare. Not the a-hole. Block her and her whole family. She's not mature enough to be married and has obvious issues with manipulation and communication. Leave her out of your life. You will be happier without her and eventually find someone who acts like an adult. Last story. Update. Am I the a-hole for breaking up with my fiancé due to my mother? Original post. So this situation is just a mess all around. So me, 26 male, and my now ex-fiancé, 27 female, had been dating for a little over 4 years when I asked her to marry, and she said yes. Now here's the problem. As we were planning about the new house we were going to buy, I talked to her about a room for my mother, 60s female, as she would live with us after we got married. I had discussed with her a lot of times when we were dating that my mom would live with us, because simply put, I am an only child, and my mom raised me as a single mother after she divorced my abusive father. She never had a new boyfriend, nor did she ever remarry. Her entire life was dedicated to raising me alone, and also, me and my mom are each other's only living relative. We have no family besides each other. My fiancé said that she did not want my mother living with us, and when I asked about why she didn't say anything when we were dating, she said that she thought I'd get over it, and we could put her in a home. And this I absolutely refused. I was furious because my mom had always treated her as her own daughter and had never been one of those crazy mother-in-laws that are rude and evil. I gave out an ultimatum that if my mother couldn't live with us, we wouldn't get married. And yeah, we broke up. Now her side of the family and her friends are calling me an a-hole. But I don't think I did anything wrong since I made it clear when we were dating that my mother would live with us. So am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Dementia patients need constant attention as the disease progresses. I wouldn't know what your fiancé was imagining, but could you thought that your mother is living alone now just fine? So why have her move in with the two of you? You would lose all privacy. Newly married couples need privacy. Then when the disease progresses, that she would be put in a home. Unless you're extremely wealthy and can hire help caring for a dementia patient is far too much for two people. If there is no way to salvage this relationship with her, then may I say have your mother move in with you now, before you start another relationship. That way, any woman will know exactly what her future will look like with you. Also, you will get a chance to understand what you're thinking of taking on. I still remember the night when I was a teen that my family had an elderly woman pounding at our door in the middle of the night during a raging thunderstorm, screaming that her husband had fallen into the well and we needed to help him. Turned out her husband had died years ago. The poor woman had dementia, and like OP, the family refused to put her in a home where she could get the care and supervision she needed. That poor woman wandered for hours in a massive thunderstorm in her nightgown before coming to our house, desperately trying to find someone to help her husband. OP would be far better off researching the best medical facilities where his mother can get the care she needs than to insist his new bride be forced to share her new home with a dementia patient. Not all care homes are awful, and there are some amazing ones out there that actually recreate a small village for dementia patients, with shops, hair salon, movie theater, everything that allow them to live as close to a normal life as possible while staying safe and cared for. Maybe you can find some sort of duplex where your mother is close but you both have your privacy. It's too late for this woman, and that's fine under the circumstances. But very few women in their 20s and 30s would be happy living with a woman in her 60s who could go on for decades. Edit: I should have mentioned this, but our family has a history of dementia settling in around early 60s, and my mother has started to show signs of forgetfulness. That's why I want to keep her as close as possible. I will be the primary caregiver. She has plenty of savings to cover the cost of her treatment and 2 apartments in her name. One she currently lives in and one we have put up for rent. After moving her in with me, I will sell one of them and will hire a full-time nurse after her dementia starts getting worse. We were never planning on having children, nor did I ever expect her to quit her job or stay at home to take care of my mother. I understand that it'll be tough, and it should be majorly my responsibility, but she raised me through tough times all on her own, and I will not turn my back on her now that it's my time to help her. My mother has only recently started showing signs of dementia. Up until a few years ago, she was doing just fine, but now her health is slowly starting to deteriorate. We are independently wealthy due to my mother founding and then selling her own company. Money will not be an issue and I can easily hire help. Edit 2. You all are correct, but my mother living with us is never the only option I suggested. I understand that what I had was a big ask, so I was ready to buy a 2-story home or something like that. But she just wanted to put her in a home and be done with it. Now for the update. So I talked with my mother about the wedding being cancelled and why it was happening. And well, got a very tight slap across my face. My mother was disappointed with the idea of my ultimatum, and she felt that I was reducing her down to a burden when she wasn't one just yet. It was already stated she'd come live with me and I got married. This was not the way my mother expected me to handle the situation. In her words, I'd just be throwing her hard-earned money in a pit because of my own selfishness, and that she did not raise me to be inconsiderate of my significant other. She explained things to me and showed me my fiancé's perspective in a much clearer light. She said she did want and expect to live with us, but not for forever, and not that soon after I got married. She also said that she would rather go into a specialized care home where the professionals could handle her should her illness get worse and changes who she is. I contacted my fiancé and we talked, and it was all pretty emotional, but it was all for the better. I apologized for my ultimatum and not seeing her perspective better, and she apologized for what she said and that she was wrong for saying that we could put her in a home. She knew how much my mother meant to me, so she admitted that her insinuating we could just drop her in a home was wrong. I was stupid and naive and could not see beyond my own ideas for our future, which is the worst thing I could have done, especially considering my life is going more than just my own from now. We decided that it's best to buy a house and move my mother in with us at least for the time being, so we can still spend some time with her while she's somewhat healthy. And when the time comes when taking care of her is beyond us, we will put her in a specialized care unit for people with dementia close to our home so we can still visit her, as my mother wants. Though we are still looking into the exact details of this plan, we are both coming out of this better partners for each other, though this may take a bit of time. We've also decided to hold off on the wedding and first try to be better partners first, but we are still engaged. Also, we'll be going on a trip around the world soon, so we could live our life as a couple a bit before my mother moves in. I know there'll be challenges, and I know I'm not prepared to handle everything. But more than anything, if I won't be able to take care of my mother in her final moments, then I at least want to spend some time with her while she's still herself. My mother's diagnosis will be next week. I'm hoping that she's just being forgetful due to her age, but if it's that damned illness, then the possible amount of time with my mother is considerably shortened. Thank you all for your comments. I hope such a situation never comes to any of you. When taking care of her is beyond us, I really hope OP is actually capable of recognizing when it starts to become too much. I have a buddy that I work with that moved his elderly mother with dementia into his house. He thought he could keep an eye on her since he works from home. That lasted all of 2 weeks before he decided that he couldn't do it anymore and that she needed to go into a home with specialized care. It was heartbreaking to not only watch her go through something like that, but also his realization that he wasn't going to be able to look after his mom after all. She passed away a few months later. People don't understand how bad it can be, and that it's a 24 hours a day. We had family friends with a similar situation, and a person with dementia just kept turning on the stove burners when no one was looking. And they can't change their behavior because it's a symptom of something unfixable. My gran wanted to go to a specialized care unit when the time comes after caring for her mother for 6 years. Then she forgot she has Alzheimer's, and she is paranoid now. I'm heartbroken. She has another personality now trapped inside her. Funny how it started as the mother moving in purely because they were close. Then when things got a bit heated, it turned into she's showing signs of dementia. And then by the edit, she can't drive anymore and is thinking of specialized care homes in the update. Once you're at the can't drive phase, you're well and truly past showing signs. The sign is actually as big as the Hollywood sign, except this one lights up with flashing neon colors.